Hello and welcome. You're tuned into TMH Daily English News. The headlines: the Tigray government calls on the international community to facilitate the release of captured enemy fighters. Ethiopian commander, says army is set for a massive invasion of liberated areas within the Tigray region, and Ethiopia tops the global list of highest numbers of IDPs. As we move on to the main stories for today, the Ethiopian government and army says it is set for a massive invasion of the liberated areas within Tigray region. One of Ethiopia's commanders, General Getachew Godina, told the media that the Ethiopian military has finalized preparations to finally relaunch its invasion. Let's take a listen.
The capacity is built in such a way that liberates the rest of the country, including Tigray. The depth of the preparation is done to that effect.
The commander also added that his army is now on a standby to accomplish that mission when it receives instruction from the country's leadership. He also urged the country's media to focus on and publicize the war for preparation of the army. Ethiopia recorded the highest number of internally displaced people than any other country in the year of 2021. According to a new report by Internal Displacement Monitoring Center, the Tigray conflict accounted for most of the displacements recorded within the Ethiopia country. The IDMC's 2022 global report made a remark on Thursday, disclosed that conflict and violence in the Horn of African nation triggered more than 5.1 million new displaced people in the year of 2021, which is 3 times the number of 2022 and the highest annual figure ever recorded for a single country. And according to IDMC findings across Ethiopia, 4.2 million people were displaced at the end of 2021, more than 80% of them as a result of conflict as well as violence. The IDMC's data shows that there were 59.1 million internally displaced people across the world at the end of 2021, but sub-Saharan Africa accounted for more than 80% of all internal displaced triggered by conflict and violence within the year 2021. Foreign military activity also influenced displacement and return trend in the number of countries, as the report also alluded to. In related development, Oxfam Save the Children revealed that one person is likely dying of hunger every 48 seconds because of drought-ravaged countries such as Ethiopia, Kenya, and Somalia. The 2 international NGOs issued this week's a published report highlighting the world's repeated failures to save off the preventable disasters. According to the report, 350,000 children could die in Somalia alone by the end of this summer. Ethiopia Insight reports Ethiopian government's Tigray siege leading to starvation, suicide, as well as exodus. Life in urban areas of Tigray is unbearable, says one IDP who recently fled from Ala to the Amhara region in search for a better existence. For some, their fate has been far worse, like the story of a married professional with 3 children who lived in Ma'ala before the crisis. The main source of income for his family was his civil servant salary. He also fed his family 3 times a day, and his children were attending private schools. Since the onset of the war in November 2020, especially under this horrific siege, he and his wife were unable to provide food for their kids. To fulfill the gap, he started working as a daily laborer, but it was only occasional employment, and his family had no substantial assets to sell. The limited support from the community and the relatives sustained them for a while, but soon there was no food in the house and the children became extremely malnourished. And amid this crisis, he saw his wife begging in Ma'ala streets. When she got home that afternoon, her husband had hung himself and committed suicide because of the soul-destroying misery and agony. Such stories are not uncommon, in Tigray these days, as Ethiopia enters yet another cycle of extreme violence, and the published photos of malnourished children are only a fraction of the horrific reality that's currently on ground. Anyone who's closely following the situation in the besieged region understands that a biblical famine is likely on its way. And as the siege continues, the severity of the malnutrition is increasing every day, and most children are past the critical level. A study by the Tigray government's health office showed that in 4 months, 1,479 people have died because of malnutrition, which was the leading cause of mortality in children under 5. Ethiopia Insight reported that even in the regional capital, Ma'ala, food isn't scarce, and the city and the new normal is having a meal once a day, or even some days not eating at all. Deutsche Welle reports that concerns are growing that Ethiopia's fragile truce may in fact be coming to a break. Reports that factions involved in Ethiopia's Tigray conflict are readying themselves to fight again, and this raises concerns that the country's fragile truce may shatter. Observers of Ethiopia's Tigray conflict have seen encouraging signs of peace within the past few months, and the truce announced by Ethiopia's federal government is still holding nearly 2 months after it was announced. Tigray fighters, who have been battling a coalition of federal forces, regional militias, since the November of 2020 eruption of the conflict, and have withdrawn back into the northern Tigray region from their neighboring Afar regions. There have been sporadic reports of fighting in the Amhara region, which also borders Tigray, as well as western Tigray zone, which is occupied by the Amhara forces. By and large, there has been a pause in large-scale fighting, finds the International Crisis Group, an independent think tank, in an April analysis of the situation currently taking place in Ethiopia. And according to this analysis, this has generated cautious optimism. But there are concerns that if more isn't done and done soon, full-scale conflict could in fact flare up yet again. The spokesperson for Tigray forces warns that Abiy Ahmed needs to put his words into action. Meanwhile, the Amhara Regional State Security Council has called on the security forces and people in general to prepare against any military advances from the Tigray army. Political analyst Mikr Miftah, and a lecturer at Ethiopian Civil Service University, believes new fighting is inevitable, adding that this time it's going to be more and more devastating. As we move on to our final update for today, the Ethiopian authorities have arrested more than 4,000 people in the Amhara region, and Reuters quoted local state media saying on Monday that these arrests were part of a wider crackdown against the militant fighters, critics, and the press. Gizacho Muluna, spokesperson for the Amhara Regional Administration, federal spokesperson Legessa Tulu, did not immediately respond to the requests for comment on the wave of arrests. More than 200 of the suspects are accused of killings. Amhara State Security official Desalegn Tasso also told the Amhara Media Corporation, accusing them of conducting illegal activities in the name of the Fano paramilitary group. It was noted to clear why the rest were being detained as well. Tasso did not provide any evidence to back up the accusations of these killings, and in a related development, Brigadier General Tafara Mamo, who was arrested last week, appeared in court on Friday, suspected of working to forcefully dismantle the constitutional order. Tafara Mamo commanded the Amhara regional forces until February, when he fell out with Abiy's government. Amhara forces and the Fano militia backed Abiy Ahmed's federal troops against the Tigray forces when fighting erupted in the year of 2020, but relations between some top Amhara officials and the central government have in fact since soured. That concludes our news and updates for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Bye-bye.